throughout my entire tenure in B.O.O.T, I wasn't exactly like the best person or the best teammate or anything like that. But like during the end of my tenure at B.O.O.T, like in January 2019, that was when I think I really crossed the line with them, and I think they were I think they basically were kind of pissed off with me and weren't happy with what I did, and not telling them, not respecting them to tell them and stuff like that. And prior to that, I also made a lot of mistakes in the team as a player and stuff like that. That I think they kind of like just remember. And I think I was done with B.O.O.T and B.O.O.T was done with me. It was kind of like that.
So, okay, so you play these Season 7 finals, and what I thought was going to happen here was that like, all these teams were going to stay in Sydney and boot camp, because like I think it was you and MVP had both qualified for both Season 7 and for IEM Sydney. But both of you actually went back. Now, having had some discussions since then with you guys, obviously there was the military service issues, there was the school issues, there was the fact that you're not a full-time team, etc., etc. So you go back to Singapore, and then like a month later you come back, or 2 weeks later even, I think it was, you come back for IEM Sydney 2018. So let's just briefly touch on this one, particularly because it was the year that had 3 spots for the Asia region. It was 2018, you had 3 spots for IEM Sydney. That must have been like a pretty big deal for Asia, right? Just to be able to have 3 teams being able to qualify, because otherwise you guys wouldn't have been there, for example.
Like, it's definitely a huge deal, because when like for our team specifically, when you see like a qualifier which has 1 slot, and you see Tyloo, VG, Flash, MVP, all that good shit in like that one freaking qualifier, you get really depressed.
Yeah, you're like, what is even the point?
Yeah, you're like, how are we supposed to win this? It's gonna be so difficult, right? But to have like 3 slots is to have like this mentality where it's fine if we lose, it's okay if we lose right now, we still have a chance at it. It's always that mentality going on. And for a player and a team to have that type of like mindset going into like a tournament, it's huge, it's super big, because then you always play at 100%. You're never afraid, oh shit, what if I do this and then I lose, or what if I make a mistake here and I die and it's over, I caused the loss. All these things will happen in every single player unless you get a fuck ton of experience. This Things like this still constantly like repeat in your mind when you're about to like, when you have a fraction of a second to make a decision. You sometimes choose the safe one when the correct one is the aggressive one, and you choose the safe one because you're scared of losing. So it was huge for us to have like 3 slot qualifier, and then we just basically played our hearts out throughout the entire tournament, not afraid of losing or anything, because we always thought we had a chance, we had a chance, we had a chance. So yeah.
Yeah, big deal. And then obviously you go to IEM Sydney. Now, again, you more or less get wrecked. So I don't know, like, what is it about B.O.O.T and playing these international tournaments? You can qualify for them and you can be potentially the best team in SEA, but a 16-6 against Maus, and then you go and get 2-0'd by NRG, 16-5, 16-9. So it's like, you're not really even pushing the issue all that much. And to be fair, neither did any of the other Asia teams, although MVP got double digits against Maus in one of the maps. So did you just feel like there was this level of experience difference that you just never would be able to overcome, short of playing in that kind of environment for a year, or was there more kind of going on there?
Like I said, right? B.O.O.T, regardless of which iteration, was never a full-time team for an entire year. Yeah, we were at most a full-time team for 2 months of a year, and that shit is not easy. Because like, when the going gets tough, right? The saying literally says, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. But then we're not tough at all, because we just always kind of like say like, this is our limitation, you know. Like, there's always like, it always felt like there was an excuse, which is I mean, the excuse is like, it's a legal excuse, right? It makes sense, it's legible, like, because we're really not a full-time team. We do try our very best, but it just basically ends up as never enough when it comes to LAN. Like, we can play online like really good, and prior to online, it's super easy for us to be practicing online prior to like a tournament, and we can do all our work, everything online. But when it comes to LAN environment, a lot of that is taken away from us. We don't get to prepare as much for tournaments, like events. Like, just because we don't have enough time. We're kind of like split between preparing for the tournament itself, adding new things and fixing stuff, and just like the timeline for us in practice every day, which is like 4 to 6 hours of practice, like maybe 5 days a week, is I always felt like it's just never enough.
Well,
Whenever like we hit a wall, we just didn't know how to get past it.
right. So this
Yeah,
will tie
and that
into
snowballs. Yeah.
another one of my questions that I will ask in a very brief moment. But
Hmm.
first, I want to talk about the ESL One Cologne Asia qualifier. So this is another one of those tournaments where you just come in and you kind of wreck, and we're like looking at that and like, why can't B.O.O.T just play like that all the time? So you come out of IEM Sydney, maybe a disappointing result, but that's fine. Back into the Asia region, back into these qualifiers, and this time you qualify for ESL One Cologne 2018 over Tyloo, over Vici. So MVP's there as well. They don't really do too much. Eclipse, this team that you struggled with in the past. Dunzo, Mongols, Rekka, like all these solid teams, and yet B.O.O.T again qualifies. You did get knocked into the lower bracket pretty early on, I will say that much. That was by Tyloo after the upper bracket semi-final, but you made this lower bracket run where you beat MVP, then you beat Rekka, then you beat Flash, Vici Flash, I should say,
Yep.
and then
Yep,
you beat
yep.
Tyloo in the grand final, which, by the way, was a map advantage best of 5. So that doesn't really happen all that often. So why does, like, first, the main question here is, like, is B.O.O.T an onliner team, right? Because this is what you were sort of alluding to a little bit prior there, where I was like, okay, you have all these really good results in the qualifiers. You seem to be able to smash people in the qualifiers, but when it comes to LAN, whether it's against Asian teams, whether it's against, top teams, you can't do shit.
Yeah, I think this onliner team thing with Boot, it's, I mean, like the best way to put it is true, right? Like we always seem to have thinking back right now, whereas like right now I can't really remember the excuses or the timeline or anything. It just felt like we just never put in 100% when we were at LAN, or I think honestly we just never knew how to, because there was a lack of there wasn't that many LAN events in Asia, especially in Singapore, as compared to like maybe AUNZ. I think there's slightly more LANs there. I'm really not sure at that point of time, but we just never get that much experience at LAN. Like at least even if we get an experience at LAN, right, it's with a different player, or it's with a stand-in,
Yeah.
or there's like a huge gap between the time of us like attending an international tournament and stuff like that. I also remember that after IEM Sydney, because during IEM Sydney we didn't have a caller at all. After IEM Sydney, we sat down. Like Alex was there, DSN was there, so we had like 7 people thinking like, how do we play this bad against Mousesports and NRG, basically not getting double digits at all. And the realization of that was that we needed a caller. Because when we really hit a wall, we had no one stepping up to try and find a way around it or over it, and that I mean that shit don't fly, right? Like you basically just lose out just like that. You just flop over, you fall down, and then you stay down, and you're dead, and that's it. Lifeline is gone. You lose in the tournament. You're out. People are laughing at you. That's the harsh reality of it, right? But it's an liner team. Yeah, that's the reason for it, because we always lose at LAN. So we try to find out why, and IEM Sydney, 2018 was where the team was like, guys, we need a caller, and then I was the one assigned to do it, and it was kind of revitalizing for us, going to IEM Sydney with our full lineup, and then I mean, getting wrecked there was actually kind of okay for us, because we did play Mouse and NRG, which are really I mean, they are solid teams, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like definitely better than us. The chances when upset maybe not that high. Getting close, people would have expected us to get a little bit closer, make it a bit more competitive. But the truth of it was nobody expected us to win. That was the truth of it. So
Yep.
yeah, we didn't win, and the solution for us to become better was to get a proper in-game leader, and I think I didn't step up. I think I got chosen to do it, or I maybe kind of suggested it as well, because I knew, I was the guy that basically should be doing it, because I was always like the captain of the team and stuff like that, and I knew how to manage people, be it in game, outside of the game. I knew their attitudes, their emotional capacity, how their mentalities are, their mindsets are, and I tried to incorporate that into the game. And then Alex was there coaching already, and I was super confident that with a good coach I could be a good in-game leader, because having worked with Alex, I knew that Alex was a guy that, you know, super smart. And before IEM Sydney, it was ESL Pro League. He helped us get that 16-14 like opening win against Greyhound. That basically helped us not be dead last in the groups. Like I remember vaguely we were like, guys, this is a $3,000 best of one, guys. $3,000 best of one. So we better win it. And we did. And I knew Alex would have been a great coach for me, and then in-game leading would have not been a problem for me. So actually, when it comes to ESL, like the ESL One Cologne Asia qualifier, where it's like we won unexpectedly, especially in the best of 5, grand final one map down. If you look at the actual map, right, on Inferno, I personally put a lot of hard work into this one, and also during that period of time, we were playing Tyloo a lot.
Yep.
We played Tyloo in ESL One. First of all, we lost to them in 2-1 in the upper brackets, and then we played them in Star Series, and then we played them again in the grand finals of the ESL, the Cologne qualifiers, right? So we were playing against them a lot, and we kind of garnered more confidence each time we played against them, and kind of like figured out like what sort of team they were. And by the time we were so used to playing against them, and so like there was so much information for us to learn from them and know like how they play, we also had the confidence. Like I myself, I was super confident playing against Tyloo. I'm always confident playing against Tyloo, no matter which like version of it, because I always felt like this is there's an extra motivational factor when the best team like in Asia is the team that you're playing against, and you really want to win against them. I'm kind of the type of guy that peaks throughout the tournament. Whenever you see me in the grand finals and there's the stats are there, you almost definitely not be bad. After like 2017, I believe. And if you look at the first map, when we played against Tyloo in the Cologne qualifier, I went like absolutely insane. I went like 23-6, like plus 17. And we won the first map 16-1. Like it was quick, it was chop, it was done. And that I believe that was a good part of why like, you know, we managed to like get that lower bracket run and win it. Because the first map was super quick. If the first map wasn't so quick, I think we have a difficult time like closing out the rest of the series.
Yeah, fair.
But and I also believe there was a ping advantage. I think we played on the Asian Singaporean servers. So Benkai and Xccurate was on 20 ping. They weren't at bootcamp. Benkai and Xccurate. And then the other 3 Chinese guys, DD somebody and AE. I don't know why AE was even there. And also AE, if AE in this team was not that strong because Captain Mo is such an important guy in Tyloo, to be honest. And yeah, I think there's a bunch of factors that kind of every time we win like a big team, it's a whole bunch of factors that factor into
Yep.
us winning. It's not just like because we're an online team. It is kind of true, but the ESL One Cologne Asia qualifier was the stars aligning for us, I believe. I also had a series of my life somehow in the grand finals for us to win it. I was super confident. It was like a breath of life into the team because I took the IGL roles. Everyone was settled in their roles. They all were comfortable, and it was really great for us. I think that qualifier, yeah.
So the way that I look at this team at that current point in time is like I think that's almost the golden era of B.O.O.T. At least when Impression is involved in B.O.O.T. You know, there's obviously some decent results after you leave, but I would even argue at that point in time, you could have been potentially the number 1 team in Asia, right? You've just won the Sydney qualifier. Like you've done well in the Sydney qualifier. You've just won the Shanghai qualifier, which we won't really have time to talk about. You've won the Cologne qualifier. And I think actually that was the time where Tyloo was really having a bit of a dip in form as well. And MVP wasn't looking too crash hot either. So I think there was like this brief, maybe like 3-month period where B.O.O.T. was the number 1 team in Asia. And I think that was the time when that happened.
Yeah, I think we recovered from the IEM Sydney loss a lot quicker than the rest of the Asian teams that were there. I think this is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Because MVP obviously kind of choked a bit. They did okay, but they didn't win series. Tyloo got to quarters, I believe, and then after that they replaced Captain Mo or something along those lines. Can't really remember, but I think we recovered better than the rest of the teams that were at IEM Sydney, and we also learned quite a bit because we were screaming a lot. Because we lost really early, right? We were screaming a lot against the teams there, and that was really pretty beneficial for us to to kind of like improve really quick, and we kind of took over the entire month of May and June and stuff like that. And right, like again, we rode the high of qualifying for a big event, like a tier 1
Are you
event.
still doing like this whole concept of being a full-time team around June, July? Like, is that still the case, or?
I don't. I think so. I think it was break, like school break again, because school breaks are usually around June.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
So
I'm looking at these results, and it's the ebb and flow of the results is always good, strong around June, July, August, and then dipping again towards the end of the year, and slowly starting to come back up towards mid-year again. So
yeah, because usually like the end of year exams are usually against around October, September. So I'm not surprised. This is like the trend within. So yeah.
All right, well then let's move into some of the rougher results maybe for B.O.O.T in 2018. When you go to the Faceit Asia Minor, you come 5th, 6th here. And again, like the expectation is probably that B.O.O.T should really perform well at this event. They've had 2 really good qualifiers, qualified for Sydney as well. And all of a sudden, another LAN event, you come 5th and 6th. And then the same, like I'm going to put these two together because we are, again, just really running over time. You love to talk, Impression. I'll say that much about you. So you have the Faceit Asia Minor, you come 5th and 6th there. Also the same for IEM Shanghai, which is like a weaker field of teams because this was during the player break. And I think a lot of teams didn't want to travel to China. And theoretically, this is one of the times where B.O.O.T, might have had a chance against some international teams. But it's a similar storyline to what happens with Greyhound at that event, where both of you are looking good, seems like things are going well, and then you come and you play this international event and shit just goes wrong, right? And this particular event, Shanghai, by the way, obviously following on from the Faceit Minor, the poor performance there, it seems to me like the straw that breaks the camel's back for your era of B.O.O.T, because I see the results after that just spiral down, and then very shortly after you leave the team. So what do you think about that? Is it like is that context correct in that these results are the ones that start to really lead to what ended up happening?
It's definitely correct because okay, simply put, Faceit Asia Minor, they invited us 2 days before the tournament, because Signature couldn't get their visas. We also choked the Faceit Asia Minor qualifiers, so it wasn't easy for us. Like we choked and then we went there, and then because it was super last minute, Ali Khan Winter, as a Kazakhstani, could not get his visa to England.
Not
to
a
the
surprise,
UK. Yeah. So we went there with B.O.O.T. That was kind of where like B.O.O.T went like super huge with the Digo round or some shit like that, right? He dropped 30 against Vici and we won against Vici, which is why he didn't finish that last. It was not good expectations to perform well because why? We flew there on a 20-hour flight, 18-hour flight, landed, got from the airport to the hotel, and like the hotel and the venue was in the same place. Landed and got to the hotel, put our stuff down, had a shower. 15 minutes later, we were setting up to play the game.
Seems good.
So all good, fucking cooked, but it's an experience, right?
Yeah.
So Faceit Asia Minor was a shopping trip. Went to try the fish and chips in England and stuff like that. So it was basically a shopping trip.
Yeah.
We still did all right, all circumstances considered, because we were fucking tired, man, and we all had to play within a day, so it was insane. Then going into IEM Shanghai, again, it's okay for Kazakhstani to apply for a Chinese visa. He's basically required to stay in Kazakhstan for 2 weeks, while the Chinese embassy has his passport. To apply and process the visa. Impossible because Winter's studying in Singapore, so he could never get a visa into China, and that shit really weighs on you, because I myself as an in-game leader have put in a lot of effort with Alex and the rest of the team to play the way that we want to play, and we can't use the players that we practice doing so. B.O.O.T is a super aggressive player. He sometimes does shit that makes you think like he's a fucking like a god, and sometimes he walks through a smoke and then you think like this guy must be like mentally like incapacitated.
Incapacitated. Yeah, look, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's a very polarizing player, let's say that.
Yeah, he's a coin flip of a guy. And Winter, on the other hand, is a super passive player. There's like a freaking turret that if you put him in the place, he'll just kill the guy if he pushes.
Yeah.
Like he's a guy that can punish well. So it's kind of hard for me as an in-game leader to like lead a team like that. I feel like it's super tiring, in my opinion. IEM Shanghai was actually the last because Winter constantly could not get visas and stuff like that. Eventually, B.O.O.T was like, this is not sustainable. We have to let Winter
Correct.
go.
Yep.
And Bulbasaur was kind of coming into the team as the in-game leader. So IEM Shanghai was actually the last event that I called, because for me personally it was getting tiring because I was not the in-game leader. I took it out in March or May, right? And for like 4 months we had decent results, but the constant like stand-ins and like that period of time was just bad for us. And I think we did actually pretty alright in IM Shanghai. Again, the opening best of one, we surprised by winning Gambit, but then we completely choked against Tyloo. We should have won Tyloo. We shouldn't have lost that hard against Tyloo. But we really lost really hard against Tyloo, and it was very bad for us. And then when we were forced to play like Gambit again in best of three, um, and this time they were a lot more ready, and like we just could like it's a map pool thing, an experience thing as a team, and also considering the fact that we had a standing, it was just not fun for us again
Yep.
at a LAN event. But we did actually win Gambit. I remember like the interview, they say B.O.O.T has always been considered an online team. You finally win something at LAN. How do you feel?
Oh, wow.
I believe Benkai said like yeah. He just said yeah. I think that was his reply to that question.
Thanks, Benkai. You
So,
really helped whoever that was out with that. Anyway, okay. So on the topic of Benkai as well, and similar to this winter discussion, you mentioned the visa problems, and after you come back, you play like IEM Shanghai qualifiers, fourth place. It wasn't really a good tournament for you, but very shortly after that point, you like move Benkai to an inactive role. Winter leaves. Moxie and Bulbasaur come into the core roster, and this is where, like, every time I'm talking about the 7-man core of B.O.O.T, this is kind of the era that I'm talking about, even just prior, like, because there was all those roster issues, like you said. Whenever you go to an event, there seemed to be a change. So, like, it just reiterates the problems, I think, for B.O.O.T in that, like, things start to go well, and then you have to remove Winter from the roster. Benkai goes on to military duty, and that that just kills the team almost.
yeah, it definitely did, because Benkai and Winter was like two guys with the strongest fucking firepower in our team. Um, these guys are the guys that you want like trading and clutching for you.
Yeah.
Because they're good, right? And Moxie's like venture with NDO failed, so he was kind of like a free agent this entire time. So having him come back in, and then Bulbasaur, who has been standing in and like on and off for us for a while, was actually alright. But that lineup, Moxie, ImpressioN, Splashkey, Tommy, and Bulbasaur, was not a lineup that would be a championship lineup, I believe, because we didn't have like, I believe the firepower was kind of lacking, and also the individuals didn't fit that well in the team. Like for me, like I like to think like fantasy CS sometimes, like put a team together, who do you want in it? And these 5 players that we had wasn't exactly like a lineup that would click very well. I also stepped back from the in-game leading role, so no one was really, I think Tommy started in-game leading, which wasn't like fantastic, because Tommy was never known for doing that. He's like a good entry fragger, right? He'll pop off
Mm.
sometimes, get like a 4K round, entering a side. But he's not someone who's like great at in-game leading. When I think back on this like particular timeline, I always have this like slight regret of not continuing to in-game lead. Because I think that experience would have been great for me, and also our results would have been a lot better. That's what I felt. Because when Benkai and Winter left the team, I basically put it upon myself to step up and become like the next star player of the team, and like really frag hard for the team. So I stepped away from in-game leading, and I kind of like I remember like very specifically from going to sitting in the center to sitting at the side and focusing on my own gameplay, and that was like that team wasn't that great, I feel. And this thing with like the constant roster changes really got to me. For me to think like, fuck, the only reason why we have Moxie and Bulbasaur is because the other 2 players, not that they chose to leave or anything like that, or they are bad players, it's because they can't commit anymore.
Yep.
And that mentality sucks. Like that mindset that's stuck in the back of your mind is really shit. It doesn't make you it doesn't help at all. So yeah, that was like the downward spiral and complete GGs like from August to October, I think.
It's all right. There's only a couple more results that I want to talk about when it comes to Boot, because
Mhm.
obviously you moved to BTRG early on in 2019. So you had the ESL Pro League Season 8 Asia again, and in this one you didn't even make it out of the SEA group, so that was a pretty disappointing result behind Signature and Lucid Dream. And that's
Yeah.
like the time period where I think we all started to go, ooh, actually, Thai CS might have something going for it. And that's where like this whole Thai CS meme came from.
Yeah.
And then after that as well, you move into Extremesland 2018. So I want to have a bit of a bigger discussion about Extremesland 2018, which is where
All
you
right.
came third to fourth. Wasn't a bad result there at all. I mean, this was on
Mhm.
land, so it's like, hey, hang on. Maybe results are going back up. So the Forsaken thing aside, we'll talk about that in a bit. What were your general
All right.
thoughts on this event? Because it looked like things went pretty well for Boot.
For Extremesland, it was actually, I think the competition in Extremesland wasn't that strong. I
Hmm.
think. The 2018
Yeah. There was no
Extremelands.
Tyloo, no Renegades, no
Yeah,
Vici.
there wasn't exactly like amazing teams in that particular iteration of Extremesland, because the only good team back then was MVPPK.
Yep.
And I think looking at it right now, it's really just not great teams. You know what I mean? And Boot at that point of time, coming off from like our entire October and August, like in July run, going overseas a lot, playing against Gambit and winning that best of one against Gambit was a huge confidence boost for us. Even though like going into Extremesland, it was a different lineup. Um, me, Tommy, and Splashkey were super confident, like in playing good at that event, because we're really pretty much quite experienced at that point in time. Bulbasaur and Moxie as well has always been like a good player, and then Bulbasaur was kind of uh kind of like going through like this transition phase from being an amateur to a pro player, so it was actually pretty okay, like that result, considering the teams weren't that good. Actually, to be honest, I think we should have been in the grand finals against MVPPK, but we choked against NASA. It was a bit unfortunate because on the third map against NASA, we had 10 rounds on T on Mirage. NASA had 5. It was like 10-5, and then like I think NASA won pistol. It was 6-10, and then we had a Tommy's PC died. And then there was like a half an hour break while they fixed his tech issues, and then like we completely lost we completely lost the plot. We dropped the fucking ball and we choked on the last map in the best of 3, and then we lost to NASA, and then they went on to the grand final. So I think it's, this style of things happen, right? Like unforeseen circumstances where
Yeah.
it's like PCs fuck up, tech issues whatsoever. Um, but we tried our best with what we had, and third, fourth was what we got. Because considering the level of the tournament or the level of the teams in the tournament, it was we should have at least gotten first, second, I believe.
Okay. So, well, speaking of the 30-minute pause or whatever, now let's just have a quick chat about ImpressioN and what your opinions were on this Forsaken moment. Because I've heard this story before and I thought it was quite funny. So I want to just get it down again for anyone that hasn't seen any of those other videos. Because obviously you're at the event. Now, if anyone doesn't know, Forsaken's the guy that got caught cheating on LAN, the player from India. So you can look that up if you don't know who that is. But it was a big deal back in 2018. I was casting the game. And the reason I talk about the pause is like there was a massive pause. There was like a 45-minute pause where we were just talking, we were chilling, talking on camera and saying, I mean, presumably this is just some sort of tech issue because there's been tech issues already. And then we go to a break and then 10 minutes later they tell us someone's caught cheating. So I mean, it must have been a little bit more exciting for you sitting in the venue. Like now that I've seen the venue and I've been there, it's not a big venue, right? So
Yeah.
you can sit in the crowd and see exactly what's going on the stage. So tell me what happened from your point of view.
Um. Okay. So basically, I was at the stands. You know where the stands are, right? There's literally
Yeah.
like maybe 5 meters away from the stage, and like I took a photo. Like it's pretty popular. It's pretty hot on Twitter. That basically there was like 4 or 5 admins surrounded around Forsaken's PC. So I was at the stands on the 4th row, like high up in the back, and then Nick from CS:GO to Asia, or Paper Rex founder, was like in the stands on the first row. So he's kind of like way down below me, like 3 meters apart from me. And he was there at CS:GO to Asia's media team. So it was super funny because I was like, I shouted like pretty loud. Like I was alone because I was the rest of my team was in the prac room, just chilling and then watching the stream. I was alone at the stands. And I was like talking to some of the other guys and like, hey, the guy cheating ah. So many admin at his PC. Confirm cheating lah. This is like the very Singaporean thing.
Yeah.
Then Tommy comes in. Like we're speaking on WeChat. Oh my god, I think this guy he might be cheating. And then Tommy walks in, right? Tommy's a big guy, big man, big heart. Comes in, big fucking voice as well. He comes in. Hey, he cheating ah? Really ah? At the like the entire like stage area and the stands area
Yeah.
where it's pretty small, so everyone can hear that. Forsaken has his headset off. I'm pretty sure he heard that. And dude is just like sitting there like,
Well, he was
wow,
cheating.
like four admins will crowd around his PC and like, what's going on? I remember Nikhil saying, hey, don't make remarks like that, man, you could ruin a guy's career.
I think he ruined his own career.
He ruined his own career. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty funny. It was like interesting. Especially for me to see that at LAN like live because I could see his face. He was not happy. Marzil sitting right beside him was constantly leaned over. It's just like looking at his screen like.
Yeah, like what the fuck is going on to my team? Optic India, rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Rest in
Rest in
peace.
pieces. In fact, actually, Forsaken is completely like gone off the map. Not surprising. So yeah.
Well, speaking of rest in peace impression in boot, because once we get into 2019 in January is when you were benched in the boot roster. So let's talk about this. This is obviously a pretty hot topic. I feel like we're the face of boot almost up to that point, and to see you get removed from the roster was a bit of a surprise. So how did all of that sort of go down?
Okay, so in September of 2018, I got to know my current girlfriend, the girl that I'm with right now, the lady,
Yep.
beautiful, amazing lady, Shirley. I got to know her sometime in September. So throughout this entire time in like October and December and stuff, I was talking to her a lot, right? In December, the proposition to revamp the lineup came up because Tommy and Moxie went to asking questions. And then there was 2 slots in the team, me, Splashkey, Benkai. Benkai was going to come back because he was done with basic military training, which was the super strenuous stuff.
Yep.
He was going to come back and he could like do like part-time playing again. So I heard that this lineup was going to be me, Splashkey, Benkai, Davai, and I believe Bobosaw. And this was super interesting for me because Benkai is back. Davai, huge player from Malaysia, is going to come in. And then I wanted to in-game lead for that team again. Because I knew that if I can be put in an in-game leading role along with these 4 other players, I know how to make the space for them because I worked with Benkai especially for a long time, and it'll be good. But at the same time, I think at the end of 2018, at the start of 2019 was where my motivation to play with Boot just was completely like, it has deteriorated to basically nothing. The reason why I even signed another year was because of the lineup, and because I heard Benkai and Davai was coming, and I signed the contract thinking that I would commit to the team. But when shit really happened, when I really think about it, like in like basically February or March or something, I was not that committed to the team because at the end of the day, it was still gonna be a part-time team and stuff like that, and I was a bad teammate during that point of time. Like in like January, I had like a argument with my girlfriend, and because it's a long distance thing, I'm from Singapore, she's from Brunei. I'm right now in Brunei. This is her room, and there was a huge argument with her, and I was like, I had more care for her than I do for Boot. So what happened was I packed up everything, my PC, my monitor, everything, and I flew to Brunei. And then I didn't tell the Boot guys anything at all. So basically, what happened was that I believe when they found out, they were not that happy. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure why, because I could still practice and everything from a different place because we were part time anyways. It's not like we were full time and we needed to stay in a house, and I just like never went to the gaming house or anything like that. Um, when during Chinese New Year, Chinese New Year usually in Asia is a big thing, right? So
Course,
we take
yep.
like a 2 week break.
Yep.
During the 2 weeks that was during the 2 weeks of Chinese New Year that we didn't have practice, our group chat, the group chat like, on WhatsApp for our team was just completely silent. Like,
It's always a
and
bad
for me,
sign. You know,
yeah,
when the group
yeah,
chat is
for me,
silent and you're not in another group chat, you know,
yeah, for
oh
me, I
shit.
knew like I basically knew like what was coming. I'm not gonna lie, like throughout my entire tenure in Boot, I wasn't exactly like the best person or the best teammate or anything like that. But like during the end of my tenure at Boot, like in January 2019, that was when I think I really crossed the line with them, and I think I think they basically were kind of pissed off with me and weren't happy with what I did, and not telling them, not respecting them to tell them and stuff like that. And prior to that, I also made a lot of mistakes in the team as a player and stuff like that. That I think they kind of like just remember. And I think I was done with Boot and Boot was done with me. It was kind of like that.
Yep.
And also um in the 2 week break, after the 2 week break, I come back on the first day of practice and they're like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Alex is gonna come back. He's gonna try and trial for the team, to be the in-game leader and stuff like that. So Alex comes back. Um, Alex comes back and then like they do like a week of practice or 2 weeks of practice with him. During this time, I was just like, they told me you can either watch in the coach slot or you could like watch demos and then type out like a review or something and then send it to DSN. So I was like, the first 2 days I watched them play, I was like, nah, I can't do this anymore. I just basically started doing the demo reviews and stuff like that. And well, after like a week of trial, I spoke to the team, I spoke to DSN. Oh, excuse me. I spoke to everybody. I'm like, okay, guys, give me a chance, right? Like, I believe I can do well. I can do better than Alex, I'm sure, 100%. Even if I can't do better than Alex, I can do better than Boboso. If you put me in the team, like, but I guess basically the relationship was so strained to the point where it's like basically no one just vouched for me. They just wanted to try play with Alex instead. So it's kind of like the karma thing where it's like I put all the blame on Moxie, and then like when he left and Winter joined, and then like it kind of happened to me as well, I guess, in the sense that I'm pretty sure they just kind of put all the blame on me, and then like just like took Alex in, and then well did what they did in 2019. So yeah, I wasn't a good teammate. I'll admit it. I wasn't a good teammate. I wasn't given a last chance by them. And the 2 weeks that basically there was like no talk whatsoever, I think it's kind of fucked up. Which goes back to the entire EQ thing that I have going on, um, with Singaporean teams and teammates and stuff like that. So I think I think I think in a sense I deserve it. And but it was a blessing in disguise because going into BTRG, a lot of things changed for me. A lot of things.
Was it a blessing in disguise after what happened to
Yeah,
BTRG?
I
Look,
mean,
we'll get
yeah.
into it. We'll get into it. Let's not go straight into it right now. But the one question I had, surrounding this whole situation was, what did you sort of think of the boot roster as it stood after you left? The Benkai, Divide, Bobo, Alex, Splashkey. Based on what you said there, it seems like you feel it could have been better if you stayed on that team.
It would have 100% been better if I could have stayed on the team, because Benkai is a player that takes out a lot of space and he's part time. Splashy is a player that takes out a lot of space and he's part time. Bobosaw, Davai are two like mechanically sound players. Davai is like very good at Counter Strike, but he doesn't get the space that he needs. Alex is stuck making and creating space in a very awkward fashion. And unfortunately to say, at that point, Alex didn't have the mechanics to make up for it because he was inactive for like a year and a half as a player. Um, he didn't have the like mechanics or year, yeah, a year and a half. So he didn't have the mechanics to make up for making a lot of space without dying. Like if you look at the way Kerrigan plays, he like on train, he's the one that jumps out team main to all off, and then he calls from there, right? He's like, okay, guys, they have this guy here, there, everywhere. Go Ivy, go SL, go ladder, and then hit A like this. I'll play from here, or play off of me, stuff like that. But unfortunately, Alex didn't have the mechanics to do that. So I think Bobosaw was the one doing that, and Bobosaw is not exactly the best judge of plays at times. It's like a 50-50 thing, right? Mr. Coin Flip. And that team, if I was inside, would have been a lot better, I believe, because then I would be able to use the rest of the players better. And Alex in the coaching role will also get a better view than him in the in-game leader role, because it just takes too much space. That okay, it's like this, right? every team is like an apartment with 3 rooms and 3 beds. There has to be a guy that sleeps on the couch in the living room, and unfortunately sometimes there's a guy that sleeps in the fucking kitchen or in the toilet. So like you have to assign this space properly in the team for that team to function, to work, to be good. And it must be done really well, and really like it's something that's really delicate. And for that to happen, you must have 5 players that are really individually very skilled. So I would have been better in that team, 100%. And I guess in a sense for B.O.O.T, they were still like a part-time team at the end of the day. So kind of like they are lost that they couldn't get one more full-time player somehow, I guess. But I would have replaced one of the full-time guys anyway. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts with it.
Okay. All right. Well, I want a one-word answer here so that you don't go running off on another tangent here. If you had the opportunity to play with any of these guys again, would you do it?
Yeah, I would.
That was 3.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move into the BTRG era then. And this is a really fucking hard era for me to talk about because it's like I look at your career in BTRG and some of the results. I'm like, what even really did BTRG play in? Like there was a few things that were kind of relevant and there was a few results that you guys had, but a lot of it was like just these Chinese tournaments. A lot of the results weren't that good. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Anyway, before we get into all of that, let's just talk about your initial thoughts going into BTRG, right? Because when you joined BTRG, it was a completely different looking roster to what it was when you left. It had Fets and Truth in there, so you had a couple of European guys, a couple of Chinese guys in there as well. So were you like super excited to be joining this project and, you know, moving into this sort of mixed team that was going to be like, quote unquote, like an Asian super team or something like that?
Yeah, I was, because I get to play with Europeans. And I knew that European Counter-Strike is way different from Asian. So I was actually super excited to be able to join that team, along with the possibility of boot camping in China, something that I've never done. I mean, overseas. I mean, and also like the salaries that they provided as a full-time player was so much better, and to finally be able to like play in a full-time team was, especially with Europeans, was such an enticing offer for me. So yeah, I was super excited for it, to be honest.
Okay, cool. So I guess that turned around pretty quickly, or at least I imagine it did, because some of the first few results you had were really rough. One of the main ones that I want to touch on here is the ESL 1 Cologne Asia qualifier, where you placed 7th to 8th. You had losses to Vici and Alpha Red. At the very least, you know, you were able to play in it, which didn't happen in some of the future seasons. But anyway, you were also outperformed by B.O.O.T, so your old team, you know, and I'm sure that was a fresh wound at the time. But you looked like you were playing with a couple of stand-ins. You had like Start and Raster on the team, based on what I can see there on Liquidpedia. So from the very outset, it's just like rostermania in BTRG.
Yeah. Well, in May was when Fates and Truth, their visas were done, was expired, was over. So they had to actually travel back to Europe to get their visas done and come back. Then basically Adrian King was actually there to replace one of the Chinese players, because one of the Chinese players was lacking in like quality as a player. And but the thing was, Fates went back to Europe, came back. Truth never came back. Yeah, because BTRG has always not. To be honest, the moment I joined BTRG and I landed in China and I stayed there for like 2 weeks, I realized that BTRG may not be as good as an organization as I thought it would be, even though they had actually pumped in a lot of money and stuff and getting like European players and stuff like that. A lot of the conditions were not being met. Having a chef, proper housing, getting a translator, stuff like that was not being done for the European players. I was kind of stuck being like the translator between English and Chinese, which was super tough for me, because basically then I have zero time of my own. Like it was insane, man, during that point of time. But playing with 2 stand-ins, I mean, don't expect anything when you have 2
Of
stand-ins,
course,
right?
yeah, of course not.
Yeah. So even though I got outperformed by B.O.O.T, I was not surprised by it or anything like that, because prior to that tournament, we played a tournament and we won B.O.O.T, and we won B.O.O.T, or we got really close to B.O.O.T, and then we lost to B.O.O.T eventually in a best of 3, and that was because it was just really unlucky. Like 14, we were 14, they were 13. 3v2, one of our guys' PCs crashed, Fate's PC crashed, and some shit like that, right? So honestly, I'm okay with losing to Boot because I knew that I was building something and it would take time. Nothing was solid yet. It's just that it's just unfortunate that Truth never came back, and then Adrian King eventually replaced Truth instead of the Chinese player that he was actually meant to replace in the team. So yeah.
Okay. So we replace Truth with Adren King, and then you go again into a few of these sort of Asian tournaments around like mid 2019. I don't think there was any really notable results there to talk about.
Yep.
There was a lot of obviously issues within the team there with all the roster changes and stuff. It was still seeming like things were kind of going through the motions of really locking down a core.
Yep.
You did have some top 4 performances in like some local sort of Chinese tournaments, but again, these are the kinds of results against competition that wasn't the top in Asia, so they're not probably the level at which you were used to competing at, I would say. But I want to know, like, what was the aim or the goal of the team around that time, right? You've been in the team for a little while now. It's not like, your fresh impression of the roster. But now what are you starting to think? Like, okay, well, I've been here for a little while. Where can I take this team, or where can this team go? Like, what's going on?
Okay, so when Truth left, Fates was still with us, right? So I knew that in that team we actually had a good lineup. Me, Dreamer, Adrian King, Fates, and we had the last player, the guy that we always wanted to replace. And I knew that for that team to do well, we needed to get someone else. Um, and it was around some time around there that I believe I wanted to become like the best team in Asia still. Like that was the goal from the get go. The moment I got into BTRG, I was like, okay, I have like right players to do it now. But then when Truth left, unfortunately, like that put a huge like hole in my entire plan, right? So it was kind of like roster building and everything. Adrian King was also like a fresh prospect. Needed to teach him a lot, and at the same time, calling in both English and Chinese, getting my Chinese guys to learn English and stuff like that was pretty tough. Uh, I was just trying to juggle all these things as an in-game leader and also like even as a player or person or anything like that. And it didn't help that players left the team with no real notice. Uh, but the saving grace that came was when Xccurate popped about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to talk about that, of course. Like, to me, that seems like the roster move that was supposed to like really kickstart the team. Like, I looked at
Hmm.
that, I was like, okay, Xccurate, he's been sick, he's been fucking awesome in Tyloo.
Yep.
He had all that really good period, a lot of international experience. He should come back into this roster and really just dominate, even if there are some kinds of issues. He's another Southeast Asia player, so culturally that should be a good addition for yourself and for Dren King. These Chinese players are now moving out of the roster, and the team starts to take a bit of a different kind of cultural look.
Hmm.
So what did you think about adding Xccurate to BTRG? Like, I assume this was a big thing for you. You've even said in the past that he was like a player that you'd always sort of wanted to play with and someone that was
Yep.
a mate of yours. So this must have been like a good time for you to be in BTRG and seeing Xccurate come in.
Yeah, it was amazing for me because I've always wanted to work with Xccurate. Obviously, like Xccurate started after me in terms of competitive play, and then he went pro. Sorry, he went like full pro. Before me, like literally got to a major before me and stuff like that, right? So I have respect for him, even though he's much younger than me, and like I know that he's a player that's capable of holding his own. Him joining the team was something that like I knew that if Fates had stayed in the team, would have been beneficial for us. But yeah, Xccurate joining was something that I'm super happy about. He actually helped us become like better as a team because then we finally replaced the guy we've been looking to replace for a long time for like 4 months or something.
Did
So
you
yeah,
expect it to make like an immediate impact? Like, okay, we add Xccurate, we will become one of the top
yeah,
X teams in Asia.
yeah, definitely. Like the moment we added Xccurate, if Feds had stayed with us, if Christian had stayed with us, I think we would have immediately went like top 3 in China, immediate contention to like we would immediately be able to take down Vici at the very least, I believe.
But that didn't happen, right? So Fets
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
stay, and
Hmm.
then your results didn't really seem to improve all that much.
Yep.
Yep.
Didn't really because every time like we basically had 10 holes and 9 covers. This is a Chinese saying. 10 holes and 9 covers. So every time a hole pops up, we take a cover, we cover it, and then another hole is like left uncovered. Then it's just like never ending. It's basically the roster mania, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, I mean, I guess maybe it's easier if I jog your memory with some of these results. Maybe you don't want to talk about them.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's all good, man.
So one of the first ones is ESL Pro League Season 10, which you go into. And yeah, look, it's a fairly strong field. You got Tyloo, you got Invictus, you got Vici, you got MVP, who's still doing okay at the time, although they seem to be on that downward trend at that point. And then there's also the Thai teams, Alpha Red and Lucid Dream, who were pretty sick at that point as well. So I wouldn't go in so much to say, like, I think BTRG should have won this or should have been, like, a top team in this. But I do think BTRG should have been able to at least make an argument to get out of the group. What ends up happening is you go 0-3 in your group, which is the SEA group. It is the weaker group, right? It's not the China group. You've only got Lucid, Alpha, and B.O.O.T. Yeah, they're okay teams, but they're not, like, top teams in Asia, I would say. So you go down 2-0 to Lucid, you go down 2-1 to Alpha Red, and then you go down 2-0 to B.O.O.T. So it just seems like, yeah, the Xccurate edition, it looks like it should be good on paper, but it hasn't made a difference so much to the results. You also don't have Faceit here. So this is like the first, I think, one of the first results that you have without him. You got Eeyore instead. And I just look at that roster, which is Dreamer, ImpressioN, Adrenking, Xccurate, and Eeyore, and I go, that's not a top team in Asia. Like, that's not a top 4 team in Asia. No chance.
Yep, definitely not. I think the reason why we stuck with this roster was out of necessity more so than a choice. Because, well, we wanted to play in WSG, so we needed 3 Indonesian players. When Fates left, like, pretty suddenly as well. Kind of the same thing as Truth, just went to Europe, never came back. A bit unfortunate, but like I said, another hole to fill. So we brought in Eeyore, and decided, hey, let's pursue WSG since we have 3 Indonesians now, and they changed the rule set and stuff like that. So ESL Pro League sucked for us because basically we just had a player join that was pretty much like pretty new. We didn't play that much with him. It was like maybe a month in with him. So failing against the teams that have like history together in a sense and played longer together, it was not surprising. And obviously, as you mentioned, right, that team was not exactly like championship caliber players or like within the team. So yeah.
Yeah, so then, as you said, you focused a little bit more so on WESG, and this was a tournament that you actually did reasonably well in. You actually beat B.O.O.T, you beat Lucid Dream. The rest of the competition, I want to say, wasn't that strong, but this must have been like a nice sort of sea change for you, at least, because you've been in this roster for a while now, and a lot of the results have been pretty bad. You win this tournament, you qualify for WESG 2019, so what, are things looking up now, or the end of 2019?
Things were looking pretty good in when we won WESG, because we did beat 2 pretty like okay teams, right? Like in terms of Southeast Asia, like we did beat like the favorites to win the tournament. And we are definitely like a huge underdog team, in a sense, right? Like we were maybe like top four material, but nobody expected us to get like the first place. Well, the big difference between BTRG and B.O.O.T, right, was that BTRG is a completely LAN team. Like Indonesian guys are really good at LAN. I don't understand why, especially Xccurate. Xccurate on LAN is a fucking monster. I have no idea how he does it. Yeah, he's insane, right? I think it's just experience basically and confidence. Also B.O.O.T at that point of time, I believe was not getting paid already for like 2 months. Like their boss went MIA.
Yeah.
So again, basically every time I win, stars align somehow or other. It's pretty funny. But Lucid Dream was okay. Beating Lucid Dream was kind of a good achievement. Then beating B.O.O.T, of course, like at LAN, my O team, my X team, four out the 5 members inside of it was like basically the guys that replaced me and stuff like that. It was a pretty okay storyline for me personally. It was a good achievement. But afterwards, knowing that they were having like financial issues and stuff like that, I felt kind of bad.
Takes the shine off of it. I think.
Yeah, but That's still a W. I think that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. Based
Yeah,
on my like what I've heard from you, I look at Asia CS now as like which team can hang on the longest without having some sort of fucked up situation. Because then if they do that, all the other teams are just going to capitulate and they're going to win.
yeah,
Kind of
exactly.
seems like what it's like.
Yeah.
All right. So after that, we go into the end of 2019, and right at the start of 2020 is when your mate Xign joins BTRG. So this is the mass exodus of Korean Counter-Strike, as we have so many times spoken about. Xign remaining as the final player, although I think at that point Zeta was still on Tai Lu. But, you know, he obviously comes in and you seem to have a lot of respect for Xign. He's joined your new team, NG. He was the second player announced to that roster. So he's
Yeah.
come over from BTRG with you. But was this something that, again, like similar to that Xccurate move, you thought, right, now I've got one of these top players in the Asian region, someone who has got a lot of experience in a good team. It starts to make the team look like it could be a legitimate top team in Asia again.
Yeah. So Xign joining was something that is similar to Xccurate joining. Within a 6-month period, having these two guys join my team, two guys which are like my really close, like they're my mates, right? And these guys I'm really close to, have a respect for as both players and people. Having Xign join was like something that I really wanted, and I tried very hard to make work. I was basically talking to him since like maybe November or December when MVP disbanded. Oh wait, when Zeta and Xign left MVP, and then they took in like the new players, the current like Vision Striker, Valorant players, right? And for a long time, I was trying to get Xign to join BTRG. And when it finally happened, I was like, okay, I have Xccurate, I have with me Xign, and I know myself am a capable player. And with this call, I believe that we would do really, really well. But at the same time, it was kind of fucked up because that was when like my organization was being a huge like fucking imbecile. uh, like enforcing stupid ass roster changes and stuff that I didn't agree with. Obviously, the last time I was on like geographically challenged, I didn't put it this way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was so fucked up for me. Like it was so stupid. It was the dumbest thing ever to keep changing rosters like that and adding in players and stuff. So Xign joining BTRG, great, amazing. But me, Xign, Xccurate, the three of us, the core of BTRG just never had things going well for us. So yeah.
All right. Well, what do you want to expand on this org issue then a little bit, because it seems like that's really important context for the rest of this BTRG discussion. Like, what were they trying to do more so? Like, how were they trying to interact with the team?
Well, okay. There at one point of time they always wanted 2 Chinese players at the very least because they wanted to hang the Chinese flag on the team.
Right.
Eventually, that all didn't happen. In WSG, we're hanging the Indonesian flag. Uh, and they actually, when we won WSG, WestGC, they already had Ziwin, which was on backup, ready to join the team. And when even after we won WestG, organization came to me as the in-game leader and said, and the coach came to me and they were like, hey, kick out either you or Adrian King, either one of them, and take in Ziwin into the team, and then we have 2 Chinese players again, cause Dreamer and Ziwin, right? And I was like, no, don't do that. We just won a tournament. We can get better from here. And they're like, nope, get the Chinese guy in. Can't do anything about that. Had to look at stats for like 3 weeks and think about who was the better player that will fit the team, and eventually decided that Adrian King had to go. So EO State, we played like a Chinese tournament, Nest Pro, also in December of 2019
Yeah.
with Ziwin, with Ziwin. So like eventually there came a time where like they just always wanted to have 2 Chinese players, and they're speaking like Chinese players, not even Taiwanese or Hong Kong players, which was kind of weird for me, I guess, because I would like in a sense like I'm pretty sure the Chinese people consider them Chinese, but this is all political stuff, so fuck that,
Of course.
leave
Yeah.
it aside. I would say that it was tough to always want like 2 Chinese players in the team, considering the market for Chinese players that exists in Counter Strike, because all the good players are signed to the top 4 teams basically. and they have no reason to want to come to an English-speaking team when they can do basically whatever they want in their Chinese team and get paid well for it. So BTRG had basically a dream that would never come true, and that that showed itself in like March when we had to play the minor. So yeah.
All right, so that's like a good segue then into this Asia Minor Championship qualifier, which you ended up playing in. And looking at this, it was still a pretty disappointing result for BTRG, right? I was initially like, I looked at this and I thought, oh, you know, maybe you managed third place in the Asia Minor. But then I'm looking at the teams and I'm thinking, oh, you know, this looks like a pretty weak Asia Minor. And it turns out that it was actually the SCA qualifier. So it's Lucid and Beyond again that sort of outperform you within the SCA. The Thai team's really doing well for themselves. And BTRG, just even despite now having Xccurate and Xign, you know, two really, really experienced players within the region, and of course yourself, so that core three to me looks like it could be a team that could win something in Asia, but yet it still seems to not be happening. So obviously these org issues are a part of it, but is that enough of an excuse to say that this kind of a result is acceptable for BTRG in even an SCA qualifier?
I think at that time Beyond was pretty alright, I think. And as much as we shouldn't have lost to them, I think they were solid in a sense where it's like this Beyond roster has not changed their roster since Alpha, right? Like this they've always had that core. And like okay, to make things to put in context like how bad it was for us, the Asian minor, was that we were practicing with Heibi for the longest time, and a week prior to that, Heibi completely lost confidence in himself as a player, and he said, "Please bench me and sub me and let Adrian King play instead." So we had a week of practice with Adrian King, Xign, me, Xign, and Xccurate. So as much as me, Xccurate, and Xign could do well, it was not easy for us to like. It was definitely difficult for us to win games, having two guys that are like pretty new, you know what I mean? Like just fresh into the roster and literally like haven't even tested the full roster with Heibi, and we already had like Adrian King come back and take over for him. It's just like it's just not fun, man. Really not fun. Uh, Also the last like we lost against Beyond twice, and the second time that we lost against them and then were knocked out. Um, Adrian King had a flood in
Okay.
yeah, he had a flood. Heavy rains caused the flood, which caused the blackout, so he couldn't play. So if you actually look at that fucking series, a total of 7 people played that series.
Yep, I'm looking at
Zine
the
start,
roster.
yeah, Zine start, Xccurate, Xign, Adrian King, me, and Heibi. So they
Okay,
never meant to win that, I think.
well, let me ask you this then, because I think the expectations that were put on BTRG from the outside, like from people like myself, other viewers, people within the region, were quite high. Do
Mhm.
you think that the expectations were too high for BTRG? Like people not so much put pressure on BTRG, but they saw Impression, they saw Xccurate, they saw Xign, they said, this should be a team that should like be number one in Asia. Maybe not number one in Asia, let's say, but top four in Asia. Was that a realistic expectation?
Um, it was a realistic expectation, to be honest. To be top 4 in Asia for sure with the core that we had, but we could just never solidify the last 2 players that we had, and the last 2 players that were always like in and out or just like transitioning and everything into the team and out of the team, and all that shit was just like insane. Because of the roster changes forced by the organization, stuff like that. Even me, Xign, and Xccurate never had a chance to really improve as a core throughout the months of January when Xign first joined to the months of maybe April, all the way up until we settled on the roster for the like remainder of the year, which was Genius and EO. So yeah.
Okay, so obviously this minor qualifier doesn't really work out too well for BTRG. And then we move into another period of kind of roster mania, which, you know, seems to really just be the whole BTRG timeline. But this one in particular was crazy. And we've done this before on Geographically Challenged, but just to make sure that we get it on this show as well, I'm going to go through the list and you can tell me how this all sort of went down. So initially in April 2020, what happens is AB goes out, which we've just heard is because he wanted to bench himself. Xign goes out. Eeyore comes in. Adren King returns. Then Dreamer leaves as well. So seems like presumably the team doesn't want to keep the 2 Chinese guys anymore. Doesn't care about that. Then Genius gets added and Adren King gets benched. So like that's all in the space of 1 month. Like how does this all just sort of... How does that even happen, Impression? That's what I want to know. Like how can you make that many roster changes in 1 month?
Okay. Hebe went out. And then Adrian King was a stand-in just for the minor, right? So actually we only had 4 players. Me, Siwin, Xccurate, and Xign. So we had to find a 5th guy. So that was Dreamer. So Dreamer came in for a while, and eventually he left. Um, he joined us for like a month or so, and he left because the organization wasn't nice to him. So he had issues.
Sounds
with the
about right.
Yeah, and then Zewin left. Zewin basically, Zewin just felt like Zewin is a good player and a good guy, but he didn't fit the team well. I'm just gonna put it this way. So eventually, we had 2 slots open, and we had tournaments. So we immediately took Eeyore and Adrian like really quick, without consideration. But I also knew that Eeyore and Adrian does not work well in the team together because of past experiences with them. And then eventually I sought out Genius and I said like, hey Genius, I think let's give it a shot with you on BTRG and see how that goes. And Genius being someone that I wanted to work with, and Adrian King being someone that I felt like had kind of had too many like logistical issues to fully become pro, because Adrian King unfortunately like at one point in time didn't have his own PC and stuff like that, and I think it really ruined his confidence as a player. So I just felt like having Genius come in with EO would have been a better choice. So basically, Hebe eventually benched himself and got kicked because I said no, Hebe cannot work with us.
Yep.
Zewin left the team because I also felt that he couldn't work with us, and Dreamer left the team of his own accord to join JMT. It was formed somewhere around that time, like in
The
June or
Weibo
something,
team,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And then EO came in and stayed. Adrian came in, then went out again, and then added Genius in. So that was basically how this entire roster thing played out.
Okay. So
Yeah.
in this whole time, I really just want to get an insight into what's happening in your mind. Like, are you at the point of being just like, fuck this shit? Like, why do I have to continue to deal with this? Or is there like a motivation level that's really just gone down? Like, the stonks meme? Like, is the BTRG stonks dropping?
Well, at this point in time, when I was finally given the full rights to changing the roster and making the roster whatever I wanted it to be, which meant that EO and Genius was gonna come in, and then me, Xccurate, and Xign were gonna stay in the team. I've always had confidence in the team, because I knew me, Xccurate, and Xign would do a lot of fucking damage, and provided that we stick with a good lineup that is willing to improve and can communicate well and stuff like that, I knew that the roster was gonna work out well. So in April, when Genius was added in, and then EO was in the team already, I knew for a fact that like give us like maybe 3 months time, we would definitely win something or get like a top 4 placement or something along those lines, which I think we did. So my motivation was still good. I was still okay.
Okay.
From like April to like June, we were practicing really hard. We won like the Fire Masters League, which was like all Asian teams, which we should have won, which we did.
Definitely, yeah.
So that was also like, okay, yeah, this is all right. This team is all right. Let's just keep going then. So yeah.
All right, let's talk then about ESL Pro League Season 12. Now, you played in that, and again, that is like a pretty rough finish. This was the really weird season. Like, I didn't even cast this season. I didn't really watch this season. It wasn't even really a quote-unquote season. It was like a qualifier. It was a double elim bracket with 7 teams in it. I know ESL, they have their reasons for only having 7 teams in there. I will never agree with them, and I'll continue to bring it up until the end of damn time. But, obviously this was going to be always a tough kind of a tournament for you, having versed Invictus Gaming in the first round, and then you go on to face B.O.O.T. So you did get knocked out pretty quickly. And now that I look at it, you even got a bye in lower bracket round 1. So you were lucky in that respect. So you did actually get to the lower bracket round 2, but you didn't actually win a game.
Yep.
So is it is it still sort of this transitionary period because now you've got Genius in the roster? Are you starting to feel a little bit better about the roster, or even despite the fact that you've got this now, what I thought started to look like a pretty good roster, the results don't seem to make much of a difference. Like they don't seem to improve all that much in the big tournaments.
Well, in within April and April when we first got Genius, and then June when we played ESL Pro League Season 12, right? We were practicing really hard, and then we won like the E-Fire tournament. And basically, what happened was like, uh, in a sense, like the honeymoon period of our team is cut really short because we're a team that communicates in English when nobody's like first language is English, and this kind of created a couple of problems. Like if you look at the games that we had against like B.O.O.T and Invictus, both really good teams. Of course, we actually got really close, and we couldn't finish out both games. Like on map 2, I think like two series, two map 2s went to two overtimes and went to overtimes. Like both maps went to overtime, and we lost like 1917, something along those lines. And it was a huge fucking choke. Like we lost ecos and stuff like that because of huge comms issues. Too much panic, no calmness within the team. We also didn't have like I was very 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 busy building the system for the team and focusing very very much on calling and not so much on like the individuals. I was also trying to get Genius and EO to settle down in my system well, because it's important like as an in-game leader for your players to understand your system, how you call the double picks and comms issues, priorities, protocols, all this shit, right? It's all really big things that you have to teach players, and takes a bit of time for them to learn. And we were off the honeymoon period and playing against B.O.O.T and Invictus. We choked really hard. The series could have been a lot like closer. There's no excuse for that. I think we just sucked in that tournament because we weren't ready to play teams at that level, I believe.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I obviously know at some point around here is when BTRG sort of stopped paying you guys for all of the games. So that's obviously a discussion that we'll have maybe in a little bit when we talk about you leaving. But we'll keep that in mind. I just want to point that out for the viewers here, that they should keep that in mind while we talk about the next tournament, which was, and talking about ESL Pro League Season 12. So we talk about WDNMD Asia Invitational. Again, fuck that name. What a difficult one to say. Choose a better name. But this is actually a pretty good result for you guys. Like, I sort of put this in the same category as what I put like Weibo Cup. You know, it's one of those Asia Chinese tournaments that, like, it doesn't get as much rep as something like an ESL or a DreamHack. But if it's got decent teams, if it's got a decent prize pool, which in this instance it does, it's about 50k USD. I actually rate this as a pretty decent tournament, and you guys won it. So, like, that's a really pretty good result. And I mean, looking at it, you're missing out on Vici, so they're not there. Like, a couple of the teams that are maybe top teams aren't quite in this tournament, but like you got Tiger, you got Tyloo, 1-3, Invictus, even Lin Vision's not too bad. Beyond's there, Friends there. So there's a few pretty decent teams in here, and you guys come out of your group. You do win the group. Obviously, you know, you drop one map against 1-3, not a big deal, but you beat Beyond, you beat Marslai, not a huge deal. And then you come into the upper bracket, you beat Tiger there as well, which is a really good result. D13 in the upper bracket final, and then D13 again in the grand final. The only one thing I can say about this that sort of is a bit of a caveat for me is the fact that you never had to play Invictus or Tyloo. Like, without those wins, it's kind of like, oh, well, you won the thing, but you didn't verse the best teams. Like, Lin Vision beat Tyloo for you.
But actually, a week before we actually won Invictus in another tournament. So we are actually kind of like riding that momentum as well for winning Invictus in another tournament, in the IMBA tournament or something like that. It's just basically not covered. Yeah, basically not covered by HLTV and stuff. So yeah, not winning Tyloo is I guess it's kind of like, you know, the stars aligned again, in the sense that Lin Vision kind of took care of that for us. So yeah.
But this is like around the time when BTRG stopped paying you guys, and yet you still managed to find a win after all these poor results. So, like, how does that sort of... Because theoretically, my org stops paying me. I go like, fuck. And I start playing like shit, presumably. But you seem to have just got this good result out of nowhere. Like, was the drive still there? Probably because you've just made these roster changes and things are looking up, at least as far as the team is concerned.
I think things were definitely looking up, as you literally just mentioned. we also had NYM joining us
Right.
sometime in August, I believe, or
That's the
start of
coach, by
September.
the way, for
Yeah,
those
as
that are
the
wondering.
coach. Yeah. So NYM is a amazing coach. Does good coaching and analysis, and he's a big help to any in-game leader. So for me, that's like it's super huge to have someone like that smart thinking about the game for me, so I can focus on playing more. And the thing is, like, the rest of the team weren't necessarily as motivated as I was to win. Maybe not that they weren't motivated, but it's because the motivation was being dragged down by the payments, not the salaries not coming. But for me personally, I myself as a person and as a player, I have figured out the way to find motivation for myself, to set the goals and the targets for myself and not lose sight of them, regardless of what happens and obstacles along the way. It's kind of like I think I've grown in that sense throughout my entire career. And like I did play to like I played my heart out throughout the entire thing, and I basically kept like motivating my team to keep practicing, keep trying hard. Because also another thing was that BTRG, ever since like basically I think sometime in late 2019 was already starting to play salaries late. So it's actually been an ongoing thing.
I
Like
see.
I could basically had left BTRG at the start of January, at the start of 2020. So sorry, at January. If Xign didn't join, I could have done that. Because then back then the contracts were already like kind of being breached because salaries are a month late, or month and a half, 2 months late. Um, so yeah, I tried my best to keep the team motivated. The addition of MYM, the coach, definitely helped our team like become better. And the anti-stratting and the counter-stratting thing that we did, like not so much counter-stratting and anti-stratting, it's just like knowing how the enemy plays. We always play a big factor, especially for me as a caller, because then I can call really good stacks and on CT side, or I could call really good finishes and hits on the T side. And that was a big reason of why we kind of won like Tiger and Beyond. Like we got over the obstacle of losing to Beyond and Invictus all the time, and we also won Tiger despite losing to them in the Weibo Asian Invitationals and stuff like that. So having that extra like 6 man like that coach to provide the information for you as a player and as a caller to know what the enemy is doing is definitely gonna help you win. So I think like that was huge for us, and that was a really big factor of why we won the WDNMD.
Okay. So I like that you were talking about how you sort of motivate yourself. It's something that Pielski talks about a lot, like intrinsic motivation. It's like you're not motivated necessarily by the money. Like obviously that has to be a motivating factor at some point, and you do
Uh-huh.
need the money at some point. But
Mhm.
is it for you? It's not like I play Counter-Strike to make money. It's I make money so that I can play Counter-Strike.
Um, I think honestly, like I play Counter Strike because I love Counter Strike, and then the money that comes along with it is a huge bonus.
It's what allows you to do it
So
essentially.
yeah, exactly. Like if you tell me right now, hey, can you play this like Valorant or Counter Strike for a lower salary, or like a team that is playing out of passion, I would say no, because then I'm not like then I will lose a like it allows me to keep playing. Yeah. So basically, what you're saying, and it's important to always have the right mindset and the mentality as a player, especially as a professional player. So for me, finding like goals and motivations and reasons to play good is not a problem at all, because like I can basically play like shit or not that good in group stages, and then I go into playoffs and I'm like, okay, I know I'm a playoff kind of guy and I can play well. And then the next tournament I play, and I like always convincing myself that, you know, I'm always hyping myself up and the rest of the team up, because that's kind of like my job. And if sometimes I've grown to be a player that if the going gets tough, I must get going, and then I'll pull along the rest of my team, and then eventually they'll start pushing as well. And sometimes if you can't lead by speaking, you gotta lead by example. And in CS, the best way to do that is by fragging, right? So yeah, that's kind of it's also kind of the meta game right now, like high fragging in-game leaders and stuff like that.
Yep.
So for me, it's not surprising. It's not surprising to be able to motivate myself. I've grown in that capacity, I guess.
Okay, so the reason that I wanted to talk about that is because obviously you go on to leave BTRG, citing the payment issue, which is a very recent thing, right? It just happened in October. We're still in October. So at what point does like the money actually start to matter? Because as you've said, you told me off the broadcast that you were not paid for like the last 3 months or last 4 months or something like that. So obviously you're motivating yourself in some capacity to continue to perform. You've won since the payment stopped rolling in, the WDNMD Asia Invitational. But at a certain point, push comes to shove, you have to do something about it. So at what point do you hit that, right? What was it for you that sort of put you over the line and where you had to say, okay, I'm done with BTRG?
So the thing was that they didn't. It's so like I mentioned like earlier, it's actually not that uncommon for them to delay salaries. So 2 months in is actually still okay because obviously I have savings and stuff, so I could still pay bills, still eat and everything.
Yep.
But when it hit like the 3 month mark, that's like insane. That's where you kind of like you're burning through emergency funds and stuff like that, and it has affected daily life. And it has come to a point where it's like it affects your emotional state, your mental state, even possibly your physical state because you're just so fucked up about it. Like, where's my money? And I'm working so hard for you. And when we won WDNMD, right? And we still didn't get paid. Like right after WNMD, like every day after WNMD, I tried to get our salaries. And I said, guys, let's just take a break until our salaries are here. And it just never happened. WDNMD was done when
Like sometime in September, end of September sort of thing.
the start of September.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right after the start of September, basically didn't practice or anything all the way up until I left, which was like I believe 23rd of September, which was like for 3 weeks. Even before WDNMD finals, like late August, I was already trying to get our salaries, and for like basically a month or so, like I've been trying on the daily to get our salaries and all that shit, and it just never happened. It just never panned out for us, and that was when it just got to the point where it's like I I put everything into WDNMD. I won it under the BTRG banner, and then for basically like the BTRG's boss to basically not like give a fuck about us or the entire team or the players and not respect us or anything like that because dude was constantly lying. It's insane, and he would just always use the same excuses like the 4 or 5 same excuses over the course of a week, and then the next week is the same bloody thing. It's just like basically no respect whatsoever for the players and even as people, because they gotta leave, they gotta eat, they gotta pay bills and shit. This BTRG's boss basically doesn't have like the emotional or mental capacity to go and understand that the players are people and they have to get their salaries. That's the most basic thing. And it just all like fucking came like crashing down on me. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sick of this. And that was it, man. That was
So there
that's why I
was
left.
there was still a degree of communication with BTRG. It's not like they just cold cut you off sort of thing in terms of
Like
communication.
I legit was talking to the boss like every day, and he was giving me like a new excuse or excuse that he used before.
What was he
Every
saying?
day.
Like, oh, we just don't
Oh
have
my
the
god.
money, or
Like
like it's coming?
like he was saying like oh, because of the COVID situation, banking is a huge problem in China. Understandable. But he has used that excuse like maybe 6 months prior, and we've already found a solution to get like money outside of China, but dude basically just forgets about it or something, and then he just keeps trying. Like he j- he just basically like use like excuses with banking issues or holidays or transaction failures, and then like basically like eventually it came to a point where it's like um company account can't pay to a personal account. So I told him, so he said, okay, I'm gonna go get personal funds from my parents and then pay them next time. And he said he would do that, arrange it, get it all sorted, and then the week after he just uses the company account again, and it fails again.
So how
And
much are you and the team actually owed? Like it, I assume still hasn't been paid
um, how much is it? 30, 20,000 US dollars in total, maybe.
as a team, or
Um, as a team, yeah.
yeah.
I think maybe a bit more than that. Wait, I have the I literally have like the salary thing right here. Oh no, sorry. It's It's basically 40,000 Sing dollars, which is 35,000 US, I think.
That's a lot of money.
No, 30,000 US. Sorry, 30,000 US. Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of money that he owes to the entire team, basically. It's crazy, man.
Okay, so that's the breaking point, obviously, for you. And
Yep.
you decide to leave BTRG, but what do you say to the rest of the team? Is this kind of a thing where you
Um.
go to them and say, hey, we all should leave? Or do you just say, I'm done, like, sorry, guys, I've tried my best, but it is what it is?
Well, basically, I just decided first, told the BTRG boss. I also left because I want to put more pressure on the BTRG's boss to pay the rest of the salaries to the other guys,
Mm-hmm.
because as much as anything, like as much support as I can get from other people or like NG or whatever, uh the rest of the players don't have like a backup plan or anything like that, and that salaries that is being owed to them is crazy important for them. So I left thinking like maybe I could put a little bit more pressure on the BTRG's boss, to pay out the rest of the salary so the rest of the team wouldn't leave. But apparently he doesn't give a shit about that, because even after I left, actually like for the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been still texting the BTRG, like the BTRG's boss, and asking him like how's the transfers and everything coming along, like what's actually going on. And well, basically like even in this group chat, right, like if you look at my phone,
Yeah, it's
you see
just
all
you.
the it's just me,
Yeah.
and that the other message is Xccurate. So it sucks, man. Like dude obviously doesn't care. Like even now he's still not like giving a crap. And I told the rest of my team like, guys, I'm done. I've tried my best. I'm still going to try, which I still am doing. But it's just not been panning out, man. It just really sucks because I myself was so fucking tired. Like you obviously saw like the statement that I put out. Physically, mentally, emotionally just couldn't take it anymore. So yeah.
Well, I think it's fair enough to just leave the roster. Like, I don't have any concerns with that at all.
Mm.
What was the situation surrounding NG? Like, did that happen prior to? Like, was that a contributing factor to you leaving BTRG, or did that come along after BTRG happened and left?
Um, so basically, what happened was that NG reached out to BTRG to possibly buy me out, but that was I think after WDNMD.
Right.
That was like mid-September, right, or something along those lines. And at that point of time, like I was trying like all sorts of methods to basically put pressure onto BTRG. I'm like, uh, please just pay us the salaries and then transfer me because I'm done. I'm done with BTRG. Like you obviously don't care about the players. You don't prioritize us as players or anything like that. So you might as well just transfer me to another organization that might take care of me. And well, basically the BTRG's boss was just like, yeah, okay, maybe. We'll talk about it. First I'll get you your salaries, which never happened. He even mentioned like, we'll talk about your transfer after we get you your salary. So don't be too disheartened right now. Just hang tough. I'm working on it. Stuff like that. So dude is like compulsive liar or some shit. I have no idea what's wrong with him. Um, but basically NG already reached out to BTRG, but nothing really happened. When I left BTRG and announced that I was leaving BTRG, NG came to me and like, okay, so obviously right now we don't have to go through the trouble of paying transfers for you and shit like that. Because you already left BTRG, you're a free agent now. And they said like, okay, we can help you out. Um, we can do you a huge favor. Like, uh, what they offered for me was like a signing bonus, which really helped. And I was like on board and okay with it because as a new organization and as a player and you look at a new organization and you're wondering if they actually have the money and the backing and everything,
Yep.
especially after
Yep.
getting like basically Chololo by BTRG stonks going all the way fucking down into fucking hell or some shit. Um, Having a new organization come up to me and say like, okay, I can help you out, and then pop, I sign the contract. There's cash. I'm like, okay,
Yeah, that
I
was going to
believe in
be
this.
like my question. It's like, how do you know that NG isn't just BTRG 2.0? Because look, I have no idea who's running NG, and I do just want to preface this with like my opinion really doesn't matter in this respect. But I look at that and I'm like, this seems kind of sus. Like,
yeah, exactly.
it's a team from
Everybody says the
Thailand
same
we've
thing.
never
So,
seen before. I no idea who these guys are, and they're picking you guys up after you've been in a shit situation. It's like the perfect storm for some sort of predatory bullshit to go on again. So, I mean, what's convinced you, apart from obviously it seems like that signing bonus was a big benefit?
Well, MYM is also the guy that's been talking to Jacob, which is the boss of NG. And I've also been talking to the boss of NG, Jacob, and the partners and everything.
Just saying, Jacob is not Jacob the player, right?
No, it's not. It's not Jacob the player. It's spelled
just want to
differently.
clarify that.
Jakem. It's the
Yeah.
Thailand. It's the
Okay,
Thailand
it sounds
guy.
very similar. Just for anyone that was wondering, it's not the same guy.
Yeah. So the founder of NG Esports. I've been talking to him. And MYM has been meeting him for like dinner and stuff, and he's kind of like the convincing factor because I really do trust MYM. And obviously, me saying that right now on this podcast, which will kind of leak that MYM is going to join the organization as well, but that's fine.
Well, this won't be out for another 2 weeks, by the way. So this what we're saying right now will not go public until. Let me have a look here. Probably the 31st. No, the 24th. The 24th, I would say, is when this will actually come out. So, if you've got anything that you want to keep under wraps until after that point, then don't say it. Otherwise, feel free to talk about any potential. Obviously, I'm not going to go and leak it.
Yeah, well, I think MYM is a huge factor because I do trust MYM. He really is a guy that takes care of his players. And I don't think he would basically put us in the same situation that we've encountered with BTRG because he was there for the last month of it, and he saw what was happening, and he also they also confirmed the type of funding that NG has and NG has acquired. So all that being put together into consideration and everything, because nowadays I think esports contracts and funding and investors and everything are a lot more transparent.
Yeah.
And also coupled with the fact that there was a signing bonus, and then I could basically I basically knew what sort of lineup we were gonna work with, and I believed in it. I believe that this organization, with their ideas, their the players that they want to get and the goals that they want to set, I believe I basically simply put, I believe in NG Esports right now as it is, and I will continue to work hard for them. So yeah,
that's good. So that then ties into the next question, which is how is this roster actually coming together? Who is the driving force behind selecting the players? It seems like, again, to me, from the outside, another one of these situations where ImpressioN is sort of taking over a team or building a team, right? With what you've done with BTRG, the same as what you've done with B.O.O.T. Is that the perception only because you're the front-facing persona, or do you actually have some involvement in who is being selected to join this team?
I think it's semi-true, kind of true. Basically, I'm not specifically assigned to select the players or anything like that. Everybody has a good idea of who they want in the team, and after speaking to the players that were already on board in joining NG, and thinking about the players that we want to play with, I'm basically kind of the guy that reaches out to the people that we want to talk to them and tell them hey, let's get in the team together. I think there's an opportunity for us right now. And then in a sense, the selection process is not done solely by me. It's done on a whole level. Everybody agrees on. I think that makes the working relationship of everybody in the team a lot better. And I'm kind of the guy that goes out and then go and approach the player that we want to talk about, whether or not we can work together, our mentalities, everything, the mindset we have for CS and what we want to achieve. And then if all that aligns, then I basically get the organizations to talk to each other, because a lot of these organizations are Chinese organizations that we're doing buyouts from.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm the only guy who can speak Chinese again. So I'm actually fine with that, because this is a roster that I believe will do really well. So I'm willing to put in a little bit more effort in terms of translating and hooking up the context and shit like that for the players to get into the team. So
well,
yeah.
Based on what I've seen so far from the team and who I expect to join, I think it's a team that will probably do quite well as well. It's a little bit of a spoiler that you're saying like these are Chinese orgs that we're talking to, as to which players are potentially joining based on all of the other clues that have been laid. But is there an element of like, at least for you personally, trying to save some of the BTRG players, or does that have nothing to do with it? Because Xign has been confirmed. Now, my suspicion is, and this is not at this current point in time been released, that I believe Xccurate would be joining this roster as well. I don't see you going to this team without taking Xccurate and Xign with you. And in that respect, to me, it looks like BTRG 2.0. Obviously, now the next expectation is Urcast based on the clues that have been being put out there. You can confirm or deny as you wish. And then the fifth player remains to be seen, although supposedly they would have 4 letters in their name. That's the only thing I can sort of work off at the moment. So that to me looks like a really good roster. All of those players, by the way, in Chinese orgs at the moment. Xccurate stuck in Tailu prison. Tiger is a Chinese org. Urcast is confirmed to have now left Tiger. So it's all seeming to come together. But yeah, for you at least, was there an element of saying, okay, well, can we try and at least save some of these guys from BTRG?
The thing is that it's kind of hard to like help them out, because like we also have to like consider like the future, right? Like it's tough for me to kind of like, the only way that I could really help out the guys from BTRG was try and get and pressure the salary, and try and get the prize money and stuff that BTRG owes to the players. That was basically like the only thing that I could do for them.
Or
Like
pick
of
them up for
course,
this new team.
yeah, like of course I could just say like, hey, I want to pick up like my entire BTRG roster and I think we'll do good. But the thing is that in this aspect, there was also like a decision making process that was done within NG itself, because they wanted more prolific players and players who have more experience and stuff like that. So they also have a roster that they've had in mind, and like I agree with that roster, so I couldn't really like make a decision to like okay, here's the truth, right? Like sometimes you sometimes there's times to be selfless and there's times to be selfish. And when it comes to actually like managing, like getting a good team, and me and myself as a leader and an in-game leader as well, to lead a good team onto the world, onto what we expect, and our target is the world stage. I want the best players in the team.
Yep.
And the players that NG suggested are the players that are better than the current BTRG players.
Yeah,
So
look, if my suspicions are correct, then I think that you've made the correct decision. Let's just say that. Like, I don't think you can make an argument, and I really feel for those guys that are stuck in BTRG or who may not be able to move into another team. Like, even Genius, for example, with this whole back bullshit, whatever's going on there. Like, I feel really sorry for him, but like, at the end of the day, it's the same question about like Floppy joining Cloud9 and OC. It's like, if Cloud9 comes knocking to Floppy and OC and says, would you prefer to stay on Cloud9 or would you like to join this new Cloud9 roster? If you say, I would like to stay with my friends, then I'm sorry, but you've made a bad decision. Like, it is what it is. Like, sometimes you do just have to think about yourself.
Yeah, but I've also made like, okay, the kind of the fact that I signed another year contract with B.O.O.T only to be benched like a month later was also like a testament to me making a bad decision, because I wanted to stay with like my buddies, kind of, and people that I have history with. So my suggestion to every like player that's trying to go pro is not that you should hop teams or anything like that, or you should constantly be looking to shift teams. But the truth of it is, if you want to have a career in an esport like Counter-Strike, where it's like the metagame is constantly changing, new players are coming up all the time, and then like old players are already well respected and like well established, then you gotta find the best opportunities for yourself like all the time. In the sense where it's like, if there's a better team for you to go to and you think that you can do well there, go ahead and take that chance. Especially when it comes to having like a raise to your livelihood standards, like a pay raise, better conditions in better organization. All these things are things that players should always consider. As much as you want to stay with your friends for the rest of your life because they're your buddies and you've been through a lot with them, you gotta, if you really want to go pro in professional Counter-Strike, there's no like, being in a team of brothers or mates or like best friends might not necessarily be the best thing for you in your career. So yeah.
Okay. Well, while you've been talking about that, I've just been trying to think about who might actually be that fifth to join NG. And again, assuming I'm correct in my other assumptions of Xccurate and Urcast, that leaves the player with 4 letters in their name. Now, it's a Thai org, so I have to go and say I think at least one Thai player's got to join this roster. So I'm just going to go in and throw CBBK out there. I know you're not going to confirm it right now, but I want this to be out there for my own personal reasons. For I can go back and look at this and say either fuck that was a good what a good read, or what an absolute idiot. So I'm just going to leave that out there, and that'll go in the VOD just for me to go back and look at one day in a year's time. But that's more or less the end of In Retrospect, at least as far as where your career is up to this point. Now, I do have a couple of remaining questions, and I always do this at the end of In Retrospect, that don't necessarily tie into the whole discussion. So one of them is from one of my Patreons, Will Hume. So I'll start off with that. And he wants to know who's a player that you learned most from. And I think you did answer that earlier on in the discussion, but I want to sort of put a specific timestamp in here. So maybe you've got a different player than the one that you mentioned earlier, but who's the one player that you sort of put forward for that?
I think the players that I learned from the most would probably be Ken, whom I mentioned earlier on, and Alex, which is like kind of Thai, because Ken really got me started out on my career. Like Ken really raised me to become a top player in Singapore, and then having to learn under Alex really raised me to become a top player in Asia. That's how I put it. Both of these guys are amazing, really smart. I have really big respect for as players who have more experience than me, than learning under them. Of course, right now I feel that obviously I've overtaken them as a player in like every sense, but the thing is I still have respect for them, and I'm still thankful, and I'm really grateful for the stuff that I learned from them. So yeah.
Okay. So those two. All right. Then we were discussing this a little bit earlier, actually, just on Twitter, going back and forth about building a brand as a player. And I thought it was particularly poignant in this point in time, given that COVID's all a thing and maybe
there's
CS
also
is
the
dropping.
OPL thing.
Yeah,
right?
the OPL thing,
League of Legends.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
right?
huge, man. Yeah.
So, what's your philosophy on that? Like, have you actively tried to build your brand, or is it something that just naturally comes from who you are as a person, and what do you see the value is of doing something like that?
I think I've always been a very sociable person. I'm pretty outgoing, and I can make friends pretty alright, I guess. People that don't know me for some reason generally do not like me that much, but once they got to talk to me and then get acquainted with me, they're pretty alright. They say I'm a pretty nice guy and stuff like that. So that kind of translates from my real life, like my self identity, onto my online identity, in the sense that I'm more sociable. I'm okay with tweeting some random shit to a really good player, or just talking shit. I'm not afraid of people taking my words, twisting my words and stuff like that. So being sociable was something that I is innate for me, and I think that ties in with building a brand as a player, because you have to know how to be sociable. You have to be able to do interviews well, or join on just in retrospect, join a podcast, stuff like this. You gotta be able to do all this to a certain capacity that would satisfy people who are willing to watch you. Um, it's super important also to get all these numbers on social media up and stuff like that, streaming, Twitter followers, Facebook likes, all these things, so that when sponsors or big companies come and look at someone that's in your vicinity of what you are, your expertise is, they would find you. And then eventually this brand building thing is just how much you want to put work into. I'm usually when I was in BTRG, I wasn't building my brand that much, because I was very focused on playing competitively and getting results competitively. That was always my focus. But if you actually more or less realize that after the WDNMD win, and then I stopped practicing, I was basically on social media like 12 hours a day or something, and then just streaming, building my brand and stuff like that. And I think it's super important for people to understand. You must at least take the first few steps of building your brand, and then from then on out, it's about how much effort you want to put in as an individual to like make yourself well known, be it as a like a player, a personality, like a showman, or like a esports idol or industry idol, whatever it is that you're looking for, going to go towards. So find out what you want to do and find the best path to getting to your goal, because it's the same as like playing competitively, right? You set a goal, you set a target, and then you go for it. So yeah.
Do you think you've gotten more opportunities because of it? Like maybe someone else might have been taken to BTRG, or someone else might have been taken to NG had you not built that brand? Like, do you think you're a fairly recognizable, like when people think, oh, Asian Counter-Strike player who speaks English, they think ImpressioN.
Yeah, I think like I think the kind of thing that I went for was like okay, for example, like for streaming, I kind of built my stream on it being educational and kind of like analysis work. Like I want people to think like Asian Counter Strike. I want them to think of impression. I want
Well,
to think
that's
of
a
me.
real key defining difference sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's super important because the general like the stigma towards like Asian Counter Strike is like it's mind blowingly stupid. So I want people to think like smart Asian Counter Strike impression. Yeah, this guy is good. Learn from him. And this is the kind of the road that I'm going for. Um, and then I think like it did kind of help me get opportunities and offers and stuff like that. Like the moment that I announced that I was leaving BTRG, um there were teams approaching me to play Valorant. There was a big Chinese org that approached me to be their in-game leader, even though I don't speak Chinese.
Wow, I
That
didn't know
that
that
much.
Advent was getting removed from Vichy. That's weird. How come no one's told me that?
But yeah, okay. That aside, I think having a good social media presence as well as a good branding is super important.
Yeah.
Because that really does help you get noticed. In more than just a competitive sense, it could also lead to sponsors. It could also lead to like government officials or whatever, like just talking to you and like finding out what you do and then learning. And that's very big in Singapore, because in Singapore esports is practically non-existent.
Yeah.
um all the way up until like maybe this year when Valorant was released or something. So yeah, it is good. Definitely helped me to build a brand, and the time I spent into it was worth it, I guess.
It's a good thing for when you move on from the game as well. Like at
Yeah,
some
yeah,
point,
yeah.
inevitably, you have to stop playing, and that's where, if you're a recognizable figure, you can pivot into something else a lot easier than if you were just a player.
Yeah,
Anyway, two more questions. One of them a fairly serious one. I think this is probably worthy of another like whole video, but I want to just get your quick sense of like what is your style, or like what's your philosophy on the game as an IGL, because like how do you think about the game? How do you go about deciding what team you want to play on, like how you want to build the team, etc., etc. I know that's quite a broad question, but how do you think about Counter-Strike?
Okay. Counter-Strike in the current metagame requires 5 players who are smart and hardworking. In the sense where it's like roles are completely a thing of yesterday. You no longer have set dedicated roles, because at any point of time, a player, when put in the position and the right timing, should become an entry fragger, should become an aggressive lurker, should become a passive lurker, should do it. And the metagame now has evolved to the point where every player must be capable of doing and providing the team a certain play that would heighten the chance of you winning the round. That's how much contest there is. That's how much competition there is in Counter Strike at the moment, because every player's movement, every minuscule micro movement, every little thing that they do will tie into that round's result. It's as simple as that, right? Sounds complex, but actually really simple. Every player must do their job well. That is, it's just like that. So for me, myself as an in-game leader, I give my players a lot of freedom to do the things that they want to do, but I set very important protocols on how they should communicate what they want to do, and I set very important priorities for who should move first in to make the round make the most sense, right? Like, to set a really simple example, if you want to do a split on Mirage and you only have one guy connector, that guy have to play off of his teammates, because if he dies, the flank is gone. But if you want to do a split with 3 guys from connector, then your Palace or Ramp guy has to play off of the connector guys that's coming in. And at any point of time, this connector, like the connector player, should know whether or not he should play off of Steam or whether or not he should make the play. And there's also situations that crop up that, for example, if the connector guy is alone, his teammates make a play, they're frozen, and they can't do anything to finish the round to A. Then the connector guy is freed up some space to move and then make a play instead. And then the people coming in from A ramp or Palace has to slow down. So this is like a tug of war kind of thing, right? It's a 5v5, it's a 4v4, it's a 3v3, and then to win 3v3s, you need really smart players that knows what to do in every situation. So my in-game, like my philosophy on the game, is to let my players hone their individual skills to the absolute like pinnacle of them as a player, and then set down the ground rules, the system, how we should double pick, how the flashes should be called, how the meta game of the game should be played, what style suits us, all this like good shit as an in-game leader, put it in the system, and then let the players work out how to get the kills themselves. Because if I have to tell like my connector player, hey, this jungle guy dies, it's easy to kill this jungle guy like this, then that player is not doing his work. That player is not playing smart. It means I'm thinking for him, which should never happen, because every player should constantly be thinking about what they can do to offer to the team within the round to help the team win the round. And I believe that my in-game leading style is something that's very freedom based, and I want my teammates to do a good default. I want them to make the right decisions. I want to train them and then hone their personal skills and individual level to a point where as they feel really comfortable playing in any situation. Excuse me. And then when a team with players filled with when the team filled with players like that play a game, it will always be really 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 fluid, really really smooth.
Yeah. So you're not the kind of guy that's going to be micromanaging. What I'm getting the sense of, it's like
I
put the
I
guys in
do,
the positions
yeah.
and then trust them to execute what they need to do.
Yeah, I would micromanage in the sense where it's like everybody's frozen and they have no idea what to do. Sometimes I make micromanagement calls in the sense where it's like I see that a round is gonna work really well if I'm able to tell them to do what I want them to do, and I would just take charge. I'll be like, go swing now, and then they'll swing, and then I'll just follow. Or
Yeah.
I say, come follow me right now, go, and then we just go. Like I micromanage when it's a key moment, like maybe you're 40 seconds left with the round, you have no utility whatsoever, and you have to go at that timing. You have to go, and then that's where I micromanage. I speed up the round, I slow down the round, I ask them to stop, I ask them to go fast or stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's quite interesting, and I'm sure there's a bigger discussion to be had there maybe one day. But for now, we don't really have too much time for that. Final question then is, what's the biggest regret of your career?
Biggest regret of my career. Um, I guess the biggest regret was me not playing Counter-Strike this entire time. From the very moment that I started playing competitively when I was 13, I started off with Blackshot. I should have just played Counter-Strike all the time. Like fuck Battlefield, fuck Blackshot, fuck League of Legends, all that shit. I should have just played Counter-Strike all this time, because if I had gathered the experience, I think I might be a better player right now. I mean, it's hard to say, but I'm happy with where I'm at right now. I generally do not regret things. And I generally always look forward and on the bright side, stay optimistic and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the end of In Retrospect with ImpressioN. It's been great to chat with you, of course, and we've gone for quite a while. This, I think, is the longest one I've done so far, but
Yeah,
to be fair, you have a lot to talk about. So is the opportunity for you to give your final shout outs and your final thoughts or whatever you want to do. Maybe plug your Twitch because you've been streaming quite a lot.
Well, I would suggest, like, if you enjoyed your time here, listening to the stories and everything, and you want to keep up with me for my future stories, because I believe like my life is full of drama for some reason. Follow me on Twitter at ImpressionCSGO, Twitch as well, and Facebook, all on the same handle. I recently started TikTok, also on the same handle, so be sure to
Ooh.
check that out. Also shout out to I really have to shout out to like my ex teammates for being great. And I hope they'll do better. I know we didn't like end off on a good note. NG Esports for supporting me as well. My family has always been amazing to me. Always supportive of me. My mom, my two sisters, my dad as well, and then also like I think the biggest thing that happened to me was my girlfriend buff. Because I now am planning a future with her, and that really sets like a good target for me as a player to do really well. And I mean, shout out to her for being like the most amazing woman that I've ever been with. So yeah.
Oh. And shout
Hey,
out for
also
the.
shout out to you for having me, man. It's
That's all right.
amazing.
Welcome.
It's been fun.
Fun with the views off of Impression. I was going to say shout out to your girlfriend for having a lovely wallpaper.
It's good shit, right? The
He
butterflies.
likes the butterflies. Anyway, that's the end of the episode. My shout outs, of course, Twitter, of course. You can follow me on Elfishguy. They're down there. The link's below. On Twitch, Elfishguy11, where I will now be live streaming Geographically Challenged if you're interested in that. Obviously, by the time this is out, that will have happened probably a couple of times, but go check that out. And Patreon, most importantly, patreon.com/elfishguy. All the links are in the description to the YouTube video. That you can, if you really like this kind of content, support me financially, which would be great because I'm now a freelancer and I'm having to work harder for my cash than I did when I was at ESL. Either way, really appreciate the support, likes, comments, etc. on the YouTube channel. Definitely quite helpful as well for the YouTube algorithm. But that is the end of In Retrospect with Impression. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one.
Give the man money, man.
Wasting time.